Now we're going to do the final project for our perspective lesson. We are going to combine the apple tree lane with the flying cubes project. We are going to draw a cityscape with a road and buildings on the side of the road. So for this project, you'll need a ruler, paper, pencils, and an ink pen. We're going to set the ink pen aside for right now, and we're just going to draw with our pencil and ruler to start with. So, just like you do for any perspective drawing, you have to add your horizon line and your vanishing point. So I'm going to come close to center of my paper. You can measure it if you would like. And I'm going to line the edge of my ruler up to the edge of my paper and draw my horizon line. And I'm going to make my line darker than you should. Your line should be very faint because it's just a guideline. Mine is going to be darker so that you can see it in the video. Now I'm going to find my center point of my horizon line to make my vanishing point. So I'm going to measure my horizon line, and my paper is 11 inches long. So I'm going to come to the middle at 5.5 and put my vanishing point. Now all of my lines will go to that vanishing point, the orthogonal lines. So to create this scene, the first thing we're going to draw are the lines for our street. So we're going to measure from the side of our paper 2 inches. So I'm going to put a mark at the bottom of my paper at 2 inches from the edge. And I'm going to make a mark on the other side of my paper 2 inches from the corner. That's going to be the end of my road. So now I'm going to connect my vanishing point to that mark at the 2 inches at the bottom of my paper. And that is my first orthogonal line of my road. And again, I'm doing these lines darker than you need to right now. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of my road. So now I have the outside of my road. Now in the cherry tree lane, we had the center part of our road. So now we're going to come to these two lines, and we're going to measure and put our mark at the middle of our road. So this is 7 inches. So half of 7 is 3.5. So I'll put my little mark there, and that's where my line is going to go. And when we're doing our center line, the little dashes that are closest to our vantage point are going to be darker and longer, and the spaces are going to be further apart. And as we get closer to the vanishing point, the lines will get shorter, the spaces will get closer together, and our lines will be less visible. So I'm going to put my pencil on my vanishing point, line my ruler up with the edge of my paper. So I draw a straight vertical line, and I'm going to come down and start my dashes. They're going to start longer with a wide space between, and they're going to get closer together and shorter as I make my way to my vanishing point. Eventually, it will just kind of blend together and look like a solid line. Now, we added a sidewalk in to our cherry tree lane picture. So we're not going to get as detailed on our sidewalk, but we will add a sidewalk in. So I'm going to come over, and I'm just going to add a small one. We can do it at 1/2 inch to make our sidewalk. So setting my ruler on my vanishing point and that 1/2 inch mark, I'm just going to draw the side of my sidewalk. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of my street. you can leave it just like this for your drawing if you would like to, or you can draw the complete sidewalk. I think it'll be more interesting with the full sidewalk, but if you want to skip this step, you can. So remember, in the apple tree lane, we drew another little line from our vanishing point down so that we had that little edge of our sidewalk. And we did that on both sides of our road. And then if you remember, we did horizontal lines across our sidewalk so that we would have more details in it. And again, you do not have to do this for this project if you do not want to, but I think it adds a little bit of interesting stuff to it. So I'm going to line my edge of my ruler up with the side of my paper, and I'm going to draw my horizontal lines of my sidewalk on both sides. And again, these are going to get closer together and less visible as we move towards our vanishing point. And we're keeping our lines parallel, making sure our lines are lined up with, our ruler is lined up with the edge of our paper. And our sidewalk only goes from this orthogonal line to that one. And these are our horizontal lines. Continue all the way down until you're close to your vanishing point. And they're closer together and less noticeable. And making them smaller as we get closer gives us that sense of going into the distance. And that's going to be the last one I do. So now you have your road that looks like this. And remember, from the apple tree lane, we made vertical lines coming from our lines on our sidewalk. So now I'm just going to line my ruler up with the bottom edge of my paper, put my pencil on the corner of my sidewalk, and draw my vertical line. So my ruler's lined up with the bottom of my paper, and I do a vertical line. I'm going to do that with every horizontal line, connecting it to the orthogonal line with a vertical line. And I'm going to end them right here because my line gets so close together you wouldn't really be able to see it. And I'm going to do the same on the other piece of paper, on the other side of my road. So now our sidewalks are finished. Now we are going to draw the tops of our buildings. So to do this, we are going to put our pencil on our vanishing point, line our ruler up with our pencil and the top corner of our paper. And we're going to draw a light line. It's just a guideline, and I am doing mine darker so that you can see it. Yours should be light. And I'm going to do that on the other side as well. Lining my pencil up with my vanishing point, and my ruler is connecting to that other corner. So now our picture will look like this. Now we are going to put in our buildings. We are going to draw 5 buildings on either side of our road. I'm going to show you how to do one side, and then we'll go back and do the other side. So to start, we are going to draw the front of our building. And if you remember, in the Flying Cubes project, we drew our shape first. So we are going to draw the front rectangle of our building, which will be the side because the front will be along the road, but it's going to be the shape that's towards our vantage point. I'm going to line my ruler up with the edge of my paper, and I'm going to draw a vertical line from the edge of my paper to my orthogonal line where my sidewalk is. So this is the bottom of my first building. Now I'm going to draw a line, a vertical line from this point to my orthogonal line up here. So lining my ruler up at the bottom of my paper, because that's my straight edge, I'm going to draw a vertical line to the top of that, to the orthogonal line. Now I'm going to connect this point with the edge of my paper. So I'm going to line it up, line my ruler up, making sure that it is straight and vertical, and draw my vertical line. Now I have the first shape of my building. Now we have the front. We're going to draw the side of our building, which is technically the front because it will be facing the road. So this is the side and this will be the front. So we are going to follow our sidewalk orthogonal line up quite a bit, and we're going to put our pencil there, and then we're going to line up our ruler with the edge of the bottom of our edge of our paper and draw a vertical line from that point to that top orthogonal line. So now we have the shape of our front, the shape of our building, and then what's going to be the front of our building. So now I'm going to use my pen. I told you to lay it aside. So now we're going to use our ink pen, and we're going to trace the shape that we just drew. So I'm going to put my pen on one corner of my building, and I'm going to follow that sidewalk orthogonal line to that other corner. And then I'm going to trace that vertical line to the top orthogonal line. And I'm going to trace this vertical line of the shape that I drew. And now I'm going to trace my horizontal lines, the bottom and the top of my building. And now we're going to trace the diagonal part of the orthogonal line, which is the top front of our building. So there is our first building traced out. And yes, you can see my horizon line in my building. We can erase that in a little bit. That's why I told you to draw it lightly. You can erase this line in a little bit, and that's why I told you to draw it lightly. So now we're going to draw our next building. We're going to go back to our pencil, and we're going to draw the bottom of the next building. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a horizontal line, and we're going to come up just a little bit. So here's the bottom of my first building. We're going to come up a little bit and draw a horizontal line to make the bottom of our second building. That line is going to connect to that orthogonal line of our sidewalk. Now I'm going to draw my vertical line from this orthogonal line to the top orthogonal line, and I'm going to make sure that I'm lining my ruler up with the bottom of my paper and making a straight vertical line that is parallel to this line. So that's the side of our second building. Now, just like we did the top over here, we're going to do the same thing. Putting our pencil at that line, we're going to line up our ruler with the edge of our paper and draw a horizontal line to make the top of our building. So here is the shape, just like in the flying cubes. We've drawn that shape now. Now we're going to come from this corner up that sidewalk line, and we're going to put our pencil right there, or, a decent ways from it. This side, this one is going to be bigger than this one because this one is getting closer to the vanishing point. So we're not going to go as far. We're going to line our ruler up with the bottom of our paper so we make a straight vertical line, draw up to that orthogonal line at the top. Now we can take our pen and trace that building out. There is our second building. Now we're going to create a third building the same way that we just did our first two. We're going to switch back to our pencils. We are going to come up from this corner of our building we just drew, and we're going to put our pencil a little bit from that point on that sidewalk line. And we are going to draw a horizontal line from that point to the other building, to that line. And then we're going to come up and do our vertical line. And draw the top of our building, which is a horizontal line. So there is that initial shape, just like we did. So we have 1, 2, and the start of our third building. So this goes, and so this building is smaller than this one, and we're going to make this one smaller than that. So we're going to come up a little bit from that point, maybe right about there, and do our next vertical line to make the front, the road facing side of our building. And then we are going to use our pen and trace that shape out. So we'll trace the bottom and the top of the front of the building and our horizontal lines. And our vertical lines. So now we have 3 buildings drawn. Okay, let's start our fourth building. So we're going to go back to our pencil and we're going to make our fourth building. So here's the end of that third building. We're going to come up a little bit, and of course these are going to be closer together, and then we're going to draw our horizontal line from that point over to the other building. And we're going to connect that up with a vertical line. And then draw our horizontal line for the top of our building. So there is that shape. And now we're going to come out a little bit to do the front and making it smaller than the one in front of it. Okay, so there's our fourth building. And now we are going to trace it with our pen. So we have 5 buildings. Each one is getting smaller as it gets to our vanishing point. Now we're going to add in our fifth and final building. So we'll come up a little bit. We're going to draw the bottom of our building. It's a horizontal line. Come up from that point and draw our vertical line. And our horizontal top. And we're going to come out from that a little to do that front side or street facing front. And then we're going to trace that last building with our pen. Okay, so now we have 5 buildings on one side of our street. So what do buildings have? They have windows. Now we're going to do windows in our buildings. So think about that flying cube project, and we're going to do a window. But if it's on the side of this, if it's on this side of the building, it's going to look like the side of our building. So all of our lines are going to go towards this, and then we'll have our vertical lines to make the edges of the window. So with our pencil, we can just come from our vanishing point and just on each of our little buildings, just draw a little line with our pencil. So that's going to be where our windows start. And then we'll come up and do the top part of our windows. Okay. So now windows aren't going to be that long, so we can come and make them whatever size you want them to be. So putting in our vertical line, we're going to connect those two orthogonal lines that we just drew. And I'm going to come over a little bit and make the other side of my window. Then I'm going to leave a gap and I'm going to draw a second window. Come over a little bit and draw the other edge of that window. So now my building has 2 windows. And I'm going to do the same thing with each of my buildings. And as you get to here, that very last building, there's barely room for the windows right there. So you may not even really see the window. You can add your lines if you want to, but you may not even see the windows in that building. So I'm going to go to my second building now and add in my windows. So now I have 2 windows in my building. And I'm going to do that for each of my buildings for that bottom row of windows. And the windows on each building are going to be a little bit skinnier, and they're going to slowly be less visible. So I may not even do it on that one. And then you can come in and trace those shapes with your ink pen. So I'm going to trace all of my vertical lines. And then I'll trace the orthogonal diagonals. So there's my windows on that building. And maybe I only see one window on this building. So I'll come back in and draw one window. Maybe it only looks like one window because it's so far away. Okay. So there's my windows on my buildings. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add 2 more sets of windows on each of my buildings. So again, starting at your vanishing point. And now you could measure to make sure it stays about the same. If you, well, I mean, when I say measure, I mean you can visually measure to make it seem like it would be the right distance. Because, you know, this would be too high. Maybe you wanted a little there. And then just draw your lines in. Okay. And then do the top of your window. So this one you could measure to make it the same height. So line this up. And that window is 1.5 inches with an extra little bit. So let's see. Hang on. You'll want to make sure you're making it vertical. So I would just go ahead and line up your ruler with the bottom of your paper and just trace that line all the way up your building, keeping it very light. And go ahead and do that with the other window. Okay. So now this will be the gap between, and this was a little over 1.5 inches. So I'll come with my ruler on that vertical line and I'll make a mark right there. And that's where I want my line to go through. So putting my line, my pencil back on my vanishing point and lining my ruler up with that point I just measured, another light line. So there's my window. There's my window. And then I'm going to come up from that just a little bit. Maybe right there looks good. Drawing my guideline. Then I'm going to measure from that point up, or this point up, a little over 1.5 inches. Put my guide mark there. And then draw my guideline. And I think that's all the windows I want on that building. So now I'm going to come in with my ink pen and trace those sections. And just like in the flying cube, when the lines are below your horizon, they go up towards the vanishing point. And when they cross the horizon line, they go down to the vanishing point. So there's my windows in that first building. Now I can go ahead and draw all of the windows in my next few buildings. so there's my second building. And you can finish all of your buildings. And again, on this last one, there may not be any windows. It just might be open. So once you add all of your windows down your building, you can start doing the same thing on the other side of your street. You could add windows and a door on this side of your building if you wanted to. And remember, when you add them on, if you add them right here, it's going to just be a square with horizontal and vertical lines. Okay, so now that you have the idea of how to finish this project, you can go back in, and once you finish your other side, trace everything out in ink pen, and then you can erase all of those guidelines. And then you get to color your buildings, color your road, create your sky any way you want to, and then you'll have a really cool finished perspective drawing of a city. So I can't wait to see these. Have fun finishing your perspective drawing.